This video is brought to you by Artistworks. Artistworks are part of TrueFire Studios, and they offer direct access to master musicians through their innovative online learning platform. Partnering with iconic musicians, they've crafted decades of industry experience into guided paths of online learning. Crucially, there's an option to get personalized feedback tailored specifically to your playing via their unique video exchange. Get direct guidance towards your playing goals. You can use the code GNC40 for 40% off of any of Artistworks courses. I wanted to talk today, do a little bit of story time, because one of the questions that I get asked, fairly often, if you just happen across this video and you don't know who I am, I do apologise, but I do get asked occasionally, about my kind of a melodic playing and where that sort of stuff comes from. So, in between the times when I'm sort of shredding legato type stuff or playing sort of pentatonic runs and stuff, there's these other bits that people seem to like the sound of. And people ask me, where does that come from? Or, what is some of the stuff that you're doing? And I don't have a really good answer for it, but I thought today that I'd talk about what I think might have been quite a big factor for this. So growing up, I started playing guitar at age 8. I played piano from age 5. And first of all, I learned like chords and stuff like that, but quite early on, I also had like a cassette player where I had the Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous album on it, and I used to kind of learn stuff off of that, listen to it, play it back, and play along with it, pretend I was in Thin Lizzy. This kind of continued throughout stuff. I listened to various bits and pieces. At around age 14, something like that, I discovered tabs and not LSD, but like guitar tab. Sort of started playing Iron Maiden and Dream Theater stuff, Joe Satriani and all this sort of stuff like that. I went to uni at age 17, 18, whatever it was, and one of my housemates was this really lanky guy called Matt, who also I think dealt cocaine. But we used to sit in the kind of communal space where there was a TV, and we would play Pro Evolution Soccer, not FIFA. Anyway, so like a football game. And he put on this R&B album by a guy called Tank called Sex, Love and Pain. This was the first time that I'd heard it. This just came to mind the other day. And I can play basically that album kind of back to back and like all the melodies and stuff. And it was a thing that I used to do for years and years and years later. I'd have it in the car and I'd listen to that record and I'd, come home and play along to it with headphones. After uni, I actually went and worked in a supermarket and stuff like that and had like actual jobs. And I would come home and just sort of play along with stuff. Also at uni, there was a bit of kind of John Mayer discovery, and they had a library there where I could kind of get out records from all sorts of people. So Pat Metheny and Stevie Wonder are things that I remember kind of discovering to some extent at uni. But this Tank stuff is interesting to me because it might not be the sort of thing that you've really thought about. So this is like this really kind of pretty sleazy, gospel-y R&B stuff. And yeah, that was kind of what I was playing over the intro there. There's a tune called Who Dat. Anyway, so he has a bunch of albums, and Sex, Love and Pain I think is the peak. But what I'd encourage you to do, basically what I'm saying is if you choose music that you like to listen to, then run this kind of exercise with that. A thing that I was told early on as a kid slash guitarist was that if you want to be a session player, that you need to be able to play in every single key. So I would actively seek out songs that were in unusual keys. And these days I feel equally comfortable playing in any key because I would specifically go through and find, for instance, this Tank album is really good for that. It's got tunes in C minor, E major, A major, and sort of like the flat keys and stuff. It's all over the place, so it's really good for that. And yeah, so put on a tune that you like, and this is a thing that really fits well into life when you have other things going on as well, where you're not kind of just sitting down and working with a metronome or working really hard on certain things. It can be just sort of a really relaxing thing to do. So pick a song that you really like. Maybe it has guitar in it, but sometimes I think it'd be really good to not have guitar in it, and figure out what key you're in. So for me, that's a case of like listening and then figuring out, where is the tonic. You listen, you play along, you think, right, well, that is in that key. Over time, this becomes a skill that becomes basically second nature. Then either figure out what the chords are doing, and that's the really cool thing about the Tank stuff, is that it's quite repetitive, and that's generally the case with quite a lot of pop music. Once you've figured out what the 4-chord loop or so might be, you're kind of in and able to start making music. And then the thing which is really the key, and this is, I think, what helps with kind of sounding more melodic, is to be able to play melody. Now that sounds super obvious, but I don't think it's a thing that you can get from kind of looking at a chord and going, right, I'm going to play the 3rd, 5th, or the 1st. Or this is a thing that I see people talk about a lot, that, by targeting chord notes you play more melodically. I don't think it's the case. I kind of disagree with it. I think the way to play more melodically is to play melody, and whatever that means for you. The point is that melodies kind of exist outside of chord structures as well, and you can try this for yourself actually, because melodies sound good without chords as well, which means that they're not necessarily super tied to the harmony. So that, you know, Somewhere Over the Rainbow could kind of work in lots of contexts. You could change the chords under it. You know, like the melody itself kind of exists, and being able to play melody, I think, is really the key to what can come out in your improvisation, but also, you know, when you're writing stuff. I think to me it seems like the only way to get better at this stuff is to be able to pick out a melody that already exists, and then sort of it is a sort of thing that you might hear in future, or an opportunity you might hear. So that's really the kind of dirty secret to my melodic playing, is that I think a lot of it comes from pop music, R&B music specifically. I think this Tank stuff, where I would just come home and play along with R&B tunes for hours at a time, I think that really does help. I also used to do similar things with kind of church music and that sort of stuff, but really no music is inappropriate for this kind of stuff. If anything, the simpler, more straightforward stuff is really where it is a great thing for you to try and connect to. So I would try that. You know, maybe you've got songs that you like that are guilty pleasures. Maybe you've got stuff that you hear on the radio that has got into your ears a bit. Things that aren't, you know, your typical John Petrucci, your typical Guthrie Govan or David Gilmour, whoever it is that you're listening to that you think plays melodically. I'd say try listening to something else and try playing something else. You know, stuff that you like has got to be a key part of it, but stuff that grabs you and that you can play along with. And if there's not a guitar in it, that can kind of be a really good thing, because it gives you an opportunity to be yourself along with that. And, you know, you're not trying to copy someone else's guitar playing. You're maybe trying to, you know, emulate a vocal with your guitar, emulate some aspect of the playing with your guitar, a sax even. You know, this kind of practice I think is really, really good. It's really fulfilling, and it also doesn't take a ton of energy. And so if you're already feeling tired or exhausted after a day at work, this can be something you can pick up your guitar and do. I hope that is sort of okay to talk about. But yeah, Tank, Sex, Love and Pain is the album that I did a lot of this with. Also, he did an album with Genuine and Tyrese Gibson, TGT. That has some real bangers on it as well. It's all a little bit sleazy, but I don't know, you might dig it. But yeah, some really cool kind of stuff to play with. I don't know, that's one of the things I like to do. If you want the backing track, I'll chuck it up on Patreon. Also, I was using the Super Chorus preset for HX Stomp, which to me is one of my favourite presets that I'm using now. You can grab that in the Gumroad folder. It sounds great with Strat, kind of these sparkly, voxy type tones. Cheers.